We start with President Obama. He held a news conference to talk about one big missing element in his budget, what they call entitlements. First, let me show you what he said, and then I'll explain to you what he actually meant. Let's watch.
Now, you talked about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The truth is Social Security is not the huge contributor to the deficit that the other two entitlements are. I'm confident we can get Social Security done in the same way that Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill were able to get it done, by parties coming together, making some modest adjustments. I think we can avoid slashing benefits, and I think we can make it stable and stronger for not only this generation, but for the next generation.
Stronger for the next generation. Remember, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan wound up making some cuts to Social Security. He says, oh, we've got the issue with it being, affecting the deficit a little bit. In fact, Social Security doesn't affect the deficit at all. So I'm looking at this going, what game are they playing? Then I remember what the Republican reaction to his budget was yesterday, and it was curious. They all had a similar theme. Republican leader Eric Cantor called it a missed opportunity to lead. Budget Chairman Paul Ryan said the president failed a critical test of leadership. GOP Study Committee Chair Jim Jordan said he failed a crucial test of leadership. And Republican Senator John Cornyn called it a missed opportunity to lead. So what is it? Why are they all talking about leadership and leading? He introduced a budget. So what's with the code words? What are they trying to get at? That's what we're trying to figure out. And then I see Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions on CNN's American Morning yesterday, and it began to make sense. Now listen to this.
We need to do this in a bipartisan way. None of this will ever pass if the president is not supporting it. He should be helping us. He should be really leading. He's the leader.
Do you understand what's happening? They're playing a little game here. They have a little dance going. They're saying, hey, President Obama, you left out Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in your budget. It would be great for us Republicans if you would lead on that issue. In other words, we want to cut Social Security, but we don't want to take the political hit for it. So why don't you lead on that? Okay, now that game translates to President Obama coming out today in that clip you saw first going, well, I'd like to achieve bipartisan consensus on it, but why don't you lead instead? And the game continued today. So here's Republican Budget Chairman Paul Ryan during a committee hearing. Watch him.
This year's budget in particular presented the president with a unique opportunity to lead our country. The president has disappointed us all by declining that opportunity. He punted. The president has abdicated his leadership role. First, he punted to a bipartisan fiscal commission to develop solutions to the problem. Then, when his own commission put forward a set of fundamental entitlement and tax reforms, a commission comprised of a majority of Democrats, he ignored them.
Talking about punting, we would really like the president to lead on this. Now, he already cut the spending. It ain't about the spending. It's about what they call entitlements. Now, remember, they are entitlements because you paid into them your whole life. You are entitled to them. What do they want to do? They want to talk about that commission that Paul Ryan just referred to. And that commission said we need to raise the retirement age all the way up to 69, and we need to reduce benefits. If they raise it to 70, by the way, you know that between 65 and 70, the difference is $63,000 for every person who would retire. That's the amount of money they would take out of your pocket. I am never going to let go of that sack because that is a huge amount of money that they would take from you, right? So he goes over to Obama and says, oh, don't punt, you better lead. Now Obama's going to take another shot at him because he was on the Deficit Commission. Let's watch that.
The Fiscal Commission put out a framework. I agree with much of the framework. I disagree with some of the framework. It is true that it got 11 votes, and that was a positive sign. What's also true, is, for example, is that the chairman of the House Republican budgeteers didn't sign on.
And that's Paul Ryan, and he's taking a little dig there. He's like, well, if you'd like to cut the entitlements, why don't you do it, big guy? Have at it, Hoss. And guess who takes up that challenge? House Speaker John Boehner at a news conference today says, all right, let's do it.
When it comes to the real issues facing our country, he just punted. Republicans will not punt. Everything's on the table, and we will put forward a budget that deals with the big challenges that face our country.
So after Boehner says, hey, listen, we will not punt, we will actually take this on, Obama says, all right, now it looks like we're having a deal. Let's watch Obama.
Look, I was glad to see yesterday Republican leaders say, how come he didn't talk about entitlements? I think that's progress, because what we had been hearing made it sound as if we just slash deeper on education or, you know, other provisions in domestic spending, that somehow that alone was going to solve the problems.
Nah, it's not alone going to solve the problems. You got to go after Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now that the Republicans have said it or begun to say it, President Obama says, okay, now we can dance. Okay? I didn't want to lead on it because, hey, I don't want to take the blame. We're just trying to figure out who's getting the political blame here. But the one thing they seem to agree on today is at some point they're going to cut your Social Security. These politicians drive me crazy. It is the single least popular thing in America, but it looks like they're going to agree to do it. Now, joining me is Adam Green, co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Adam, I know what a lot of Democrats are going to say. They're going to say, what do you mean? President Obama came out today and said he would not slash the Social Security. What's the matter with you guys?
Some people will say that, but it's very important just to point out that whether you call it a slash, whether you call it a cut, whether you call it a trim, any cut to Social Security is the same thing, and that is a betrayal of workers who paid into and earned these benefits. And we need to say with one solid voice, no way. This is not on the table.
Well, they say, Adam, look, it's connected to the deficit. We've got huge deficit problems. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, the best way to solve the deficit in the long term is to create jobs now, and that means massive investments in our infrastructure to get people working again. That'll pay for itself in the long term. But more importantly, I think we really need to define this debate a little bit better. It is simply just not true that all attempts to deal with the deficit are created equal. We've heard a lot from President Obama recently in the context of Egypt about how self-determination in a democracy is really important. The will of the people must govern. Well, guess what? Overwhelmingly, Republican, Democratic, and independent people say no cuts to Social Security, no cuts to Medicare, no cuts to Medicaid. But do you know what that same bipartisan consensus does support? Cutting Bush's tax cuts for the wealthy, cutting wasteful military spending, taxing Wall Street more. So we have bipartisan consensus in the country, and we just have to stop pretending that the Republican ideas are all credible. These Republican ideas are bad. There's bipartisan consensus against them, and we need President Obama to finally say so.
So, look, it drives me crazy because the consensus in Washington is exactly the opposite of the consensus in the rest of the country. And, look, there's a reason for it, because they're bought by the people who pay their bills, the lobbyists. The lobbyists like tax cuts for the rich. They got to get the money somewhere, right, Adam? And they're going to get it from Social Security. So when they say Social Security's in trouble, look, we know when the Republicans say it ain't true, right? It's got a $2.5 trillion surplus. My question to you is, why does President Obama agree with them? Why does he accept their framing? Why does he come out today and say, oh, it's related to the deficit, et cetera, and that we need to come to a consensus on basically how to not slash it, but cut it?
Yeah, well, we could probably have an entire 2-hour program about President Obama's issues with his framing. But I think it could be succinctly summed up like this. He is intent on using Republican framing on almost every issue. Today he said Social Security is not, quote, a huge contributor to the deficit. That's just not true. It is not in any way, shape, or form a contributor to the deficit. Not one penny is contributed to the deficit because of Social Security. As you said, it has a surplus. But he also said, quote, Medicare and Medicaid are huge problems, and then talked about the deficit. No, I'm sorry. Democratic presidents should not be talking about Medicare and Medicaid in those terms. They should be pointing out that millions of people like my grandmother, are dependent on Medicare to survive. And if Democratic presidents are only going to talk about social programs that are overwhelmingly popular in terms of the deficit, well, they're essentially asking to lose. We need him to have a winning mentality, to go on offense, and to finally pick a fight with Republicans and beat them.
And we need them to not cut Social Security. I mean, the one thing we beat Bush on was not cutting Social Security. Harry Reid beat him back, et cetera, et cetera. Even Harry Reid beat him back. Now to have a Democratic president, but we'll see. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe Obama will come out strong and fighting. I hope he does. Doesn't look like it from what he said today, but we'll see.
I don't think we're wrong, but I agree. It would be great if he came out fighting, and we would be there fighting with him if he did fight the Republicans on this issue, no doubt about it.
All right, Adam, thank you for your time tonight.